Lineup today, including Neha Singh from Forest, Dr. Girish Zathar from Srishti Conservation Foundation, Dr. Saurabh Purohit from Water, Dr. Marcella D'Souza, who's sitting here. She's the director of Water, and my colleague, Dr. Sharnya Chattopadhyay from Ecobari team. We're going to arm you with some knowledge, extensive dialogue, as well as probably some actionable lineup today, including to understand today's topic and its various nuances. So, whether you're here as a researcher, as a policymaker, a student, or simply someone who's interested in this topic, you're in the right place. You're also part of the network. So, let's dive in and leave today. A few housekeeping rules. As you may have attended many webinars before this, it's the same applicable rules. Please keep yourself muted and your videos may be on or off. That's up to you. Make sure if you have a question, you can actually just add that in the Q&A box that will be starting soon. And that just saves us some time. We'll gather all the questions towards the end of the webinar, and we'll try and answer as many as possible as time allows. Whatever is remaining, we'd like to answer those questions anyways, regardless. Stay tuned for updates on how we will do that. Since this is presented and hosted by Ecobari, I'd like to take a few minutes to explain what Ecobari is, the role, and where we started from. Sorry, 1 second. So in 2019, there was a need felt with consultations between various practitioners in this field at a grassroots level, local, as well as national and international level. The need was felt to bridge a gap that was immensely felt towards ecosystem adaptation, resilience, as well as conservation. That is how in 2021, Ecobari was born, based on this need to bridge and establish a collaborative. Eco is the earth, environment, and Bari is house. So that is how Ecobari comes along. It's a nice wordplay that we are really proud of. Our founders, there were 9 founding partners, along with Water and WCRES being the steering group committee right now. Our vision and mission are lengthy, but pretty simple in their understanding and nature. We want empowered communities sustainably to regenerate and manage their own ecosystems, conserve biodiversity, and derive resilient incomes. This is all in order to improve their quality of life through nature-based solutions as they adapt to climate change. And in order to do this, we want to establish Ecobari as a leading platform that somewhat becomes a bridge, is a multi-stakeholder collaborative to advocate partnerships, to bring forth knowledge, and also contribute to the country's sustainable development goals, the land degradation neutrality goals, as well as the climate change commitments, not just for India, but eventually also expanding it across the region. So at the heart of Ecobari, we have a very specific understanding of who we are trying to help and work with. So rural households and communities are at the core of our work. And in order to work with these, we have several partnerships that we would like to upscale through ecosystem-based adaptation measures, right from researchers, policymakers, local and national government bodies, various ministries and departments, to NGOs and various other practitioners, international corporate and private donors, and then, of course, the media to raise awareness. All of these will come together to help upscale ecosystem-based adaptation practices, and that is the primary goal. So how does this work? We believe that 3 action cells will contribute to this area. One being developing the ecosystem to begin with, which basically is expanding Ecobari's influence through policy advocacy, through membership drives, getting more people on board with the same agenda, and then increasing engagement through relevant events, speaking opportunities, and anything that basically we can take our understanding of EPA and bring it to people. Capacity building becomes an important part of the principal development action cell, which basically means developing and demonstrating the tools and pedagogies that go into implementing EVA practices. So, coordinating training events, building capacities for different stakeholders becomes part of this. And lastly, knowledge generation, which is a very crucial part of this exercise and this program, because without that, we're not going to be able to bring to people what we mean, what science says, what the evidence is pointing towards. So, sharing best practices, gathering case studies, evidence based monitoring and evaluation becomes an integral part of this. Just a quick to take you through a quick review of what all we've been doing over the years. There have been several webinars that have been organized so far, along with training events. We've trained farmers as well as established some trainings on climate resilient agriculture. There's been a fellowship program with SAGE, which we're also still part of. We had a film screening called Building Resilience, where we showcased stories of change and resilience across India. There was a podcast series, and it got a great response. So we will be continuing that. Stay tuned for it. We have an app from WCRES and Water called Farm Precise that becomes a very useful tool to bring all of these knowledge concepts and living segments to farmers, to rural communities. So that is one of our major tools as well. Upcoming projects include case studies. So this is already a soft call to you all that anyone working on EBA projects, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you more about how we can assess and gather these case studies and bring them forth through the Ecobari platform. We'll be doing training and capacity building certificate courses for media professionals, for any other interested groups, including university students, teachers, corporates, anyone who's interested in nature-based solutions, and to take it further depending on the needs and use cases. And of course, lastly, the most important part being to make Ecobari website an open access knowledge platform, because without an open access to all of this material, we believe that this is going to be hard to take forth. I hope this was helpful, and to know more about us, visit our website. You can reach out to us as well. And thank you. I would now like to hand over to Marcella to speak a few words about the webinar as well.
Dear friends who are here in this webinar, thank you for joining us. And I would really like to say this is going to be a co-learning event. Being in the development space, a thought often surfaces. For our own sustainability and for the humans, how do we change our mindsets? We are so much in a mindset of resource exploitation. Getting more of the land through agriculture, getting more of exploiting the groundwater resources, being more a controller of the natural systems. But what we really are within this entire system is a part of nature. We are a part of nature and not a controller of it. We need to therefore flow with nature and live in harmony with nature. And this is what this year's theme of the Biodiversity Day is. It finally all boils down to behavioral change. How do we change our behavior and our mindset from being a controller to being willing to and humble to learn from nature? What makes nature survive? What makes nature thrive? And what supports us in our own survival? Biodiversity is not about tigers and elephants. Biodiversity is all around us, in the water resources, in the soil, in the trees, in the unseen. Soil is not just grains of sand. Its richness and productivity and the services it provides comes from the rich microbiomes that are there, which most of the time we don't realize. Today's theme of the World Biodiversity Day invites us to go to our roots, to live in harmony with nature. And I have to say, for our own survival, forget about just development. Our survival is at risk. As we face the worsening situation and challenges of climate change, let us go back to our roots, to nature, to live in harmony with nature and for the sustainability of the human race. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcella. This was wise as always. I'd now like to bring forth Neha Singh, who's our first speaker. She's the founder and director of a very important and an NGO that works in the space of forest regeneration and environmental sustainability. And hand over to you, Neha. You're on mute, so maybe we can't hear you there.
Can you see the slides? Hello, everyone.
Yes, Neha, we can see.
You can see the slides. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Marcella correctly said, she gave you the background of what we are, how we are, why we are gathered here. So happy World Biodiversity Day to all of us, each of us who are here. You are here, it shows you have already taken the first step. You want to know more, you want to engage more, you want to be part of this change or action. We are all, I think, changers or change makers or doers. I am representing organization Forest, and we are working for last 11 years now. We are working pan-India on restoration, biodiversity, climate action. These are the areas. I'll come to that, what Forest is doing. But what part I would like to discuss you first is the theme of Kunming Montreal GBF or Global Biodiversity Framework. What I would like to discuss, what is this framework, how it clears or gives you a path to conserve the biodiversity and how it is related to sustainable development goals. So see, we know day to day, we just keep on living our lives. We work, we eat, we sleep, we just go on. Okay. And around us, the nature is in decline. We do not focus on it, but we know the words which were like, climate change, global warming, these were words, I think 15, 20 years back. But now we see day to day what's happening around us. So these are, the crisis has come very close. It was not, it is not something which, we just foresee and we just think about. So unprecedented loss of biodiversity is happening. There's a report which came in 22-23 and which says that 1 million species, known species are already, threatened with extinction. So, and it is human-induced extinction mostly. So this is what we are doing, this is our doing. And for this, the global leaders or the nations, they took notice of this, it is happening around us and they came together. And in 2022, when these leaders, nations came together, they worked on a global biodiversity framework. The framework they gave, it clears, this shows the path for how we can conserve the biodiversity on this earth. So let's take a dive and see what this framework is all about. 1 second, give me a second, I'll just scroll down. Okay, this is a short snapshot of this framework. just maybe you listen to me and this is too much text, but just see what happened in 22 when these nations came together. There are 188 countries who came, including India, who decided or who agreed that there is a need of this framework to stop this loss of biodiversity. The vision is very, very precise to halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity or decline in biodiversity. This was the only vision of this framework, which was signed by 188 countries. What they gave us 23 targets and they gave us 4 goals. These 23 targets has to be achieved by 2030, and the 4 goals are for 2050. So the targets, 23 targets, set us a path which can take us to the 4 goals of 2050. Let's see what are the 23 targets. I have summarized the major targets for you. So the major and first most target is to restore and conserve 30% of terrestrial, inland, and coastal marine ecosystems. So whatever ecosystems we have, 30% has to be conserved by the end of 2030. It can be conserved or it should be restored. It can be any of one of these. Reducing pollution, harmful practices which harm biodiversity directly. Okay, the example is, if you know those subsidies for pesticide subsidies for some harmful chemicals, these are the directed drivers of which harm biodiversity. And it talks about sustainable natural resource management. There should be biodiversity-friendly practices which should be supported and promoted globally. The framework says the developed country should pay $30 billion per year to the countries who are developing or who are in transition of developing. And this money or this finance should go directly to the nature conservation or biodiversity conservation. The framework says these climate action should be nature-based solution. It should have ecosystem-based approach. And it is all, again, should go to restoration and conservation of ecosystems and biodiversity. What keeps this or puts this framework apart? It puts the monitoring mechanism, it puts the reporting mechanism, and how the progress report should be generated every 5 years or less. You know, even this is a voluntary treaty. This is a framework is voluntary, but the countries are expected to make their framework, their policies, and their action plan as per this framework or aligned to this framework. And these countries, all 188 countries, have to report this action plan, which will be assessed globally. Now, protecting community in everything, in restoration, in conservation, in natural resource management, in everything what we are talking about, in everything, the rights and the participation of indigenous community or the local community or the local villagers has to be protected. In every treaty, it is in every target, it has been the written key, the protecting community and indigenous people rights should be the foremost in every target. Halting and reducing extinction of species, and halting and reducing invasive species. These are the major targets to be achieved by 2030. So we have 5 years, and government of India is already working on this. I'll come to that. Now, these 2030 targets are directly, put us for the achievement goals of 2050, and 2050 goals are, again, extinction loss should be reduced. The wild species should be in abundance by 2050. We should be living in harmony with nature by 2050. This is the vision of 2050 goals. Now let's go, and I would like to discuss now how these targets or this global biodiversity framework is related to sustainable development goals. So what is sustainable development goals? Let's go to that. Now, in 2015, United Nations members, they gathered together and they adopted these goals for the sustainable development of nations, of societies, of people. These 17 goals were put forth, and 193 countries signed these or ratified these sustainable development goals. Now, our government also, central government or Indian government, monitor, implement, and integrate nations' programs and policies as per SDGs since 2015. So you must have a solar mission or Swachhata Abhiyan, or there are various missions and programs which are aligned to SDGs, and these are monitored very regularly. Even state programs and state policies are aligned with SDGs, and these are monitored. Niti Aayog is directly assigned for measuring SDGs and how it is progressing in India. So these SDGs are mainly about poverty, inequality, and climate change is one part of the treaty, SDGs. Now, let's see how these SDGs, which were adopted in 15, and how the framework, which came in 2022, are aligned with each other. Both talk about the same things. So, see, SDGs acknowledge that biodiversity is the critical for achieving SDGs. For a sustainable development, biodiversity conservation is critical. Similarly, Kunming Montreal framework and provides mechanism and tools to achieve sustainable development goals. So they are talking about same thing. They are interlinked with each other. And one is necessary to achieve other. Sustainable development goals create that conditions to fulfill this framework, and framework is there to fulfill the sustainable development goals. So they are aligned with each other. Let's see how step by step, if you would like to see. So Sustainable Development Goal 5, it talks about gender equality. Now, similarly, in Global Biodiversity Framework, gender responsive approach or gender equality, target number 23 talks about this. Anything, even we do conservation or restoration or natural resource conservation, scientific research, whatever we do, it should be gender responsive. So women or girls should be part of decision-making actions. And I'm happy to see so many women here already in panel and as a speaker. So we are already gender responsive here. So same, first, both of Sustainable Development Goals and framework talks about gender equality. Now, SDG 10, we say sustainable cities and communities. Framework specifically talks about sustainable urbanization, sustainable urban areas. They talk about increasing blue and green spaces in urban areas. Planning in urban areas should be biodiversity inclusive. So again, they are talking about same thing. Sustainable Development Goal 12 talks about sustainable consumption and production. And Global Biodiversity Framework talks about sustainable production and of goods in target 15 and 16 as I've put. And so how the framework says that this should be achieved through awareness to consumers, to given access to data, given access to information and knowledge sharing. Again, they're talking about the same thing. A Sustainable Development Goal 13 talks about climate change. Now, Global Biodiversity Framework, there are 23 targets. Target 1 to 8, all these targets talk about climate action in some form or other. They talk about restoration of 30%, conservation of marine and terrestrial ecosystems. They talk about restoration, they talk about conservation, they talk about removal of invasive species, removal of human-induced biodiversity loss. High biodiversity value ecosystems like wetlands or mangroves should be conserved. There should be biodiversity loss should be minimum. So framework talks about climate action in almost all these targets. 1 to 8 targets talk about climate action. SDG 14, if we look at, it talks about life underwater. Similarly, in Global Biodiversity Framework, marine ecosystem, coastal areas, restoration of these areas or conservation of these areas is highlighted. Reducing plastic waste and reducing ocean acidification. Again, is in target 1 to 8 has been specified in different targets. All targets somehow mention this life underwater, life on land in conservation, forest, reduction of invasive species, reduction of human-induced extinction of species. So again, life on land is addressed by both Sustainable Development Goals and by framework. So in one way or other, Sustainable Development Goals talks about, prepares a ground for framework, and framework is supporting the sustainable development goals, and both are, we have to achieve till 2030. So the target for both SDGs and framework is 2030. Now India is signatory to both sustainable development goals we signed in 2015, and now we are a part of Convening Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So in India put an action plan and strategy in 24, and it is aligned with the Global Biodiversity Framework. What is our action plan and what is our national biodiversity strategy? It focuses in 4 areas, just summarized. It says about conservation and restoration, similarly like what Global Biodiversity Framework says, that terrestrial or marine ecosystem should be conserved or restored. Threats to biodiversity in these ecosystems should be reduced, pollution should be controlled, and invasive species should be reduced or minimized. Again, sustainable use of benefit sharing, again, benefit sharing with indigenous people, with local community, or with the locals. Increasing green spaces, sustainable cities comes under second. Then community participation of again, gender equality and gender neutrality should comes under community participation. Community should be part of decision making. Community should be part of action plans. And the policy and institutional framework, Government of India says is strengthening biodiversity regulations, mainstreaming biodiversity into policies, mobilizing finance, and it all drives to conservation of biodiversity. So India stand on GBF is very clear, and it is very aligned with the framework. And now India's new policies are coming, or we see already we are working on these key. We see a shift in policies, or we shift in where we were talking about a restoration biodiversity on some platforms. Now it is, shift is very clear when we are working in these areas. Now, I would like to talk about what as an organization we are doing as a forest. As a forest, we work in all of these areas, or all of these points we have highlighted. We work on restoration of forests, wetlands. We are restoring mangroves areas, and these are all nature-based solutions. This is just how to work with plants and what are the natural resources available on this area. We are working on invasive species removal in both protected areas and non-protected areas, in communities, in villages, in any areas where we see invasive species are spreading, like it is covering almost 40% of Indian forest. And we are removing those species and we are restoring the native forest in these areas. Mainstreaming biodiversity is one of the major area we work on. So what is mainstreaming biodiversity? It's a big word. So what is talking about biodiversity, talking about trees, talking about conservation, talking about forest, in communities, in villages, in with policymakers, with corporates, wherever we are working, we just talk about biodiversity. We discuss about conservation, because these are the topics we generally do not discuss about. We generally do not, talk in forums, but we do bring these issues when we are in wherever we are working. We work on climate change. We work on threatened species like vulture conservation and crocodile conservation. We grow these flora species, which are threatened, rare, endangered, and threatened species. We collect them from forests, we grow, and we again restore them back all over Indian forest areas. So if the seed is being collected from eastern region, then when the restoration of that region is being done, we restore these species back. And we do also study, very species specific requirement of flora or habitat. If a species need a specific plant and it is dependent on those plants or those conditions, we do create and do restore those back for the survival of that specific species. We work on mitigation of human-wildlife conflicts. We work on coexistence. We were working on wildlife corridors. We are working on wildlife underpasses when under highways these are being created. So how the designing of underpasses, We are working on, see, very consciously we work on the term we use it, conservation consciousness. So creating that consciousness that biodiversity is important, or creating that consciousness that why conservation should be done. Until and unless we create that value among the stakeholders or people who are around, it won't sustain. For the sustainability is very important to create the value of biodiversity. So we talk with people, we talk with whoever comes to these areas, maybe person who is working there, who is cleaning there, who is just associated with areas. We just talk to them about why it should be done. And we document this traditional ecological knowledge. We talk with indigenous people, we talk with communities, we document, and we run various platforms. As Sanika said, there are EcoBuried. Similarly, we have a forest ecology website, which is just a open knowledge sharing platform about Indian trees. And now it will Indian insects. So these are just ecology series about Indian trees. This is a attempt, or this is a step to decrease the tree blindness, or we got plant blindness, because we do not know trees, we do not care about trees. So let's try to what are the beauty, or what is the how these native trees are, who these are. So we are running a tree of the year series. We run every year. Now it is being run, so you can part of the tree of the year. Again, attempt to, let's talk about trees, let's talk about conservation. And we try to bring finance to these areas, to climate action, to biodiversity and conservation. This is what we do as an organization. And I would like to see our choices will define what happens to this planet and all these living creatures. So, you matter, what you do and what you say and what you practice matters. So this is a very apt, what you see, we are reading newspaper and we see, oh, what happens to me if it happens. So I would like to, leave you on that note, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at the end of this. Thank you.
Neha, thank you so much. That was very insightful, and you really respected the time boundary as well. So kudos to that.
Thank you.
Thanks for mapping out the relation between SDGs, Kunming Montreal biodiversity framework, and I think the most important part was creating value for biodiversity and the conversations around it. Without wasting any more time, I'd like to invite Dr. Girish to present his talk. And we'll take all the questions at the end, just a reminder. So anyone who has any questions, please write that in either the chat box, or we'll open up a Q&A box. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Marcella and EcoBari team for inviting me for this wonderful occasion. So without wasting time, I will share my screen. So just give me a feedback whether you can see my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
Just full screen mode. So today I'm going to talk about a very interesting subject and very close to my heart. So it is about cultivating future, biodiversity, ecosystem restoration, and agrobiodiversity. So this entire lecture is into three parts. So first of all, we understand how we came here and how we changed our world. Then why biodiversity is important to us, and if biodiversity important, then we have did a lot of damage to the earth, and how we can restore that. And ultimately, if we have to survive in the long term, the agrobiodiversity is the most important part which we need to understand fully. So about climate change. So climate change is not at all new to human beings. So if we look back in the history, so we are on this earth as a Homo sapien since last 2 million years, and we have experienced different climate changes. And you would be surprised to see the next slide. So you can see these slides actually depict the picture of temperature on our planet Earth since last 500 million years. But instead of that, we can just focus on two rectangles. One is red and one other one is green. So the red rectangle indicates that how we diverge from the Neanderthals and Denisova man, and Homo sapien, we arise as a Homo sapien. And you can see the temperature. You can see a lot of fluctuations there. So when we arrived on this earth, so there were a lot of changes happening. And it was a time of a transition. And Homo sapiens took over and benefited from this transition. And then we started living our life as a hunter-gatherer. And then we come here and see the green rectangle. This is time when we stopped being a hunter-gatherer and we started doing agriculture. And then you can see a relatively stable climate. And this relatively stable climate gave us an opportunity to evolve from a hunter-gatherer to agriculture man to industrialized man, and now technology man, I can say. And we are living now in an Anthropocene. So this is about the transition which we have seen. You can see a lot of fluctuations have happened and we have survived those fluctuations. And I would say we have adapted to the changes in the climate. So what were we? We were part of ecosystem. We are hunter-gatherers. We are hunting and gathering. And interestingly, if we see what has happened in last 10,000 years, again, the climate was relatively stable. You can see the picture on the right-hand side. There is a graph and there is a dotted line which says 1961 to 1990 average temperature. And we can see this last 10,000 years to
Girish, there's a little breakage of your video. Could you just turn your video off until you present?
Can't hear anything.
Just a minute.
Yeah, Girish, maybe you could turn your video off and just keep the presentation slides on. Yeah, we can see it. Also, you're on mute.
So this dotted line is basically the average temperature since 1961 to 1990. And again, we can see there are fluctuations, but still, I would say they are more or less bearable, or we were able to adapt to that. But on the right-hand side, you see there are a lot of fluctuation, and that fluctuation is little dangerous for us because we have seen the changes, but these changes are not going to be as stable as they were in the past. So let's just a minute. I will mode. Yeah. Interestingly, our genes have also adapted, and this is a recent discovery that people have found out that when we were about 30,000 years ago, the hunting adaptive haplotype was quite dominant, and the farming adaptive haplotype was quite recessive, because that time we transitioned from eating kind of a vegetarian diet, like our ancestors chimpanzees and gorillas still eat vegetarian diet, but we shifted from vegetarian diet to the hunting gathering or non-veg diet. And you can see the gradually the farming adaptive haplotype went down, hunting adaptive haplotype grown up. From hunting gathering, we shifted ourselves to herders. And from herders, around 10,000 years ago, we started doing agriculture. And again, the farming adaptive haplotype has been dominant and the hunting adaptive haplotype has gone down. So this is very interesting discovery. And this discovery tells us that since last 10,000 years, we adapted to the agriculture and we started living kind of a stable, sedentary life. But what happened in 1800 AD? Because of the discovery of coal and discovery of oil, we started using this ancient sunshine in the form of energy. And this has changed everything, because we started pumping the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, and that led to global warming, and this global warming led to the climate change. So let's see what we have done in last kind of a lifespan of human being. Consider this entire life of human being as a 24-hour clock. So 18 hours, 37 minutes and 26 seconds, we were hunter-gatherers. So we spent most of our time doing hunting gathering. Then we became an agriculture man. So we spent 4 hours, 48 minutes doing agriculture. And since last 34 minutes and 34 seconds, we are industrialized or technocrat man. So this is our human life clock. So this can give you a brief about how we survive, how we were part of ecosystem. Even doing agriculture, we were part of ecosystem, but then we started changing our ecosystem. So what we have done. So this is the present status of our urban ecosystems. We are mining the minerals and the metals, and we are pumping carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We are building concrete jungles. At the same time, we are also building the hills or the mountains of garbage. So this is what the current status of our urban ecosystem. And we are following something. You can see there is one picture of a pyramid which was developed by a Maya civilization. And this civilization lasted almost 1100 years in Central America. Are we doing something same? You can see on the right hand side, there is a technological marvel. It's Dubai's Burj Khalifa. So is there any similarity between what we are doing? So Mayans did something that they survived for 1100 years, and we are doing something. We may survive maybe similar time, but then they collapsed. And what has happened now? So earlier, the ecosystems were larger, the base was large. On that base, there were villages, there were towns surviving on the villages, and those upon those towns, there were cities. But now what has happened? The cities have grown so much, they have become so big that they are putting a lot of pressure on our natural ecosystem, and the entire pyramid has reversed. So there are cities and the big towns and villages, and the natural ecosystems has really few patches of natural ecosystems, continuous natural ecosystems are surviving. And this is about eroding the foundation. We are eroding our foundation. Now, see, these are the 9 drivers of collapse, and this is a part of a book written by Professor Jared Diamond, and he has coined these 9 drivers of collapse. And these 9 drivers of collapse are, I would say, they are acting right now. The first one is the destruction and conversion of natural habitat that is going on, loss of free source of food. Because of this natural habitat loss, this free source of food is also getting lost. If you work with the communities, they can express their feelings about it. Earlier, a lot of food was available from forest, but now that is gone. The loss of genetic diversity is happening, loss of soil fertility is happening, declining productivity is happening, toxic chemicals are being released in the environment, invasive species are there, atmospheric gases, global warming is happening, climate change is happening, and the final one is the population explosion. So all these 9 drivers of collapse are acting together. So what we need to do? We need to change, adapt, or suffer. But if we look into human history, we can see we are adapting to the climate change since last 2 lakh years, 20 lakh years, 2 million years. And if we have to survive right now, then we need to adapt. If we don't adapt, then we will perish. This is a new phase of adaptation that humans have not seen or not thought about. I would say not seen, but not thought about. But we need to do this kind of a adaptation. That is a proactive adaptation and ecosystem adaptation, or we can say this ecosystem adaptation. And there is a very interesting picture of polar bears. So polar bear is basically a carnivore and a top predator in the Arctic ecosystem. But because of the garbage which we are dumping in Arctic ecosystem, these animals have adapted. The snow, because they survive in snow, but the snow is there, not there. It is melting. The glaciers are melting. There is no snow. There is no snow. There is no seal. So they are now adapting to the new environment. And interestingly, their sizes are reducing. So that is how the wild animals or the nature adapt itself. But we also need to think about that. What we can do here. Because here, very interesting analogy I would like to share. So we are actually living in a zoos where the resources we can go into the mall and buy grocery, buy provisions. we are changing our environment, and we are acclimatized to the this kind of a lifestyle. We cannot go back to hunter gatherer life. If we decide today we're going back to a hunter gatherer lifestyle, I don't think so it is easy for several of or I would say 99% of the population will die, because we have lost those skills. We have lost we have lost the knowledge also, and we have also lost the gene, the haplotype, hunting gathering haplotype. So that is the current condition. And in that case, what we need to do is we need to maintain this zoo. And how we can maintain this zoo? Let's try to understand how we can maintain this zoo. So my friend Neha talked about convening Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And in that framework, we have talked about living in harmony with nature by 2050. So it's a not a long-term thing, because only 25 years are there with for us to start doing this. So if we start stepping towards our goal, maybe by 2050 we will achieve this particular goal. So what we need to do, first of all, we need to understand the interdependence. You can see on the left-hand side, there is an interesting figure. So if suppose we call this as a systems diagram, so systems diagram, it is talking about a system, how it works. So if there is a high biodiversity, then there will be complex interaction happening between the species. The pollination, like predation, mutualism, symbiosis, decomposition, all these complex interactions, they actually produce the ecosystem services, and they help in enhancing the ecosystem functioning. So these ecosystem functioning, especially the nutrient cycling, energy flow, or resilience, disturbances, all that thing are the ecosystem functioning. And this ecosystem functioning leads to stable and diverse ecosystem services. So all of us know about the four type of ecosystem services. So most important for us are water, soil, pest control, climate regulation. These are the very important ecosystem services on which we survive. What these ecosystem services do, they improve the habitat quality and the resource availability, because resource availability is a very important part here. So that provides the resource availability as well as the quality of habitat, and that helps or creates favorable conditions for more species to thrive, among which we are the most important. And if that is there, if favorable conditions and more species are there, again it supports the high biodiversity. So this we need to understand. This is the interdependence we need to understand. Let's go further and see, apart from this interdependence, we need to understand the feedback loops also. So what are the feedback loops? So you can see here on the right hand side, there is a diagram. Again, this is a systems diagram. It is not very difficult to understand, but if you try to understand it in a simple way, so it's kind of a part of a same coin. There are two sides and the same coin. So if suppose there is a biodiversity loss, that will lead to certain kind of changes in the land, in the water management. Land will degrade if there is a loss of biodiversity. If the land degrades, then it will impact upon the carbon sequestration. It will decrease the carbon capture and storage. If there is a decrease in carbon and capture storage, it will lead to climate change. Again, the climate change will further lead to biodiversity loss. So it is kind of a vicious cycle. But this vicious cycle can be turned into a virtuous cycle. So if we start or we stop degradation of biodiversity and start protecting it, start protecting the ecosystems, restore the ecosystems, then we can actually reverse this entire scenario. And this vicious cycle can become a virtuous cycle. So what we need to understand, the biodiversity actually enhances the resilience. Let us take the example of the web of spider. If you touch the web of spider and if you press it, so it can go down, but if you release the pressure, it will bounce back. It is very stable and very resilient also. Even during the rains, you can see the entire web is loaded with water. But in few moments or maybe in few minutes, the spider can get rid of this water and bounce back. So the biodiversity is a web, and this web is resilient. If we remove the parts of this web, then this resilience may not be there. The stability may not be there. So if there is a more diversity, there will be diverse ecosystems, and these diverse ecosystems actually better able to withstand the disturbances. and it shows resilience, it's come back, it bounce backs, and it helps it continues giving the ecosystem services. Similarly, take an example of Amazon forest. So it is called as the lungs of earth. If suppose there is a degradation of the Amazon forest, that will create a havoc in the entire world, because we call them as a lung of the or earth. If suppose there is a damage to the lung, the humans cannot survive, or any animal cannot survive if there is a damage to its lung. So similarly, we also need to understand the spatial and temporal scale. So the spatial scale is a global scale. It can be a local scale also. So if you do restore the local ecosystems, it is put together, will have a greater impact on our global scale. Now, temporal scale is a very tricky thing, because if we try to understand in the climate change context, the pollution which we are doing right now, the impact will be seen after 30 years. So we need to work a lot, because whatever gases or whatever greenhouse gases we have pumped in the atmosphere since 1800, so that cumulative impact we are seeing right now. But if you want to reverse it, we need to think about long term. So temporal scale is a very important, and we need to understand it. So now, why we are talking about all this? Because again, this is a concept of WOTR, 5 capital concept. So we are talking here about 4 capitals, which are very important for human well-being. So base capital is a natural capital. On this natural capital, it is based like our social capital, and this social capital actually helps to build capital as well as the human capital. And there is another capital, which is the financial capital, which is again very important. But these 4 are very fundamental, because the interaction and the ecosystem services and the interaction between all these things lead to human well-being. So if we want to enhance all the capitals, especially the financial capital, which is very important in current context. But before we increase our financial capital, we need to increase our natural capital. At least we need to stabilize our natural capital. So what we can do here, we can restore habitats and our ecosystems that will provide us good ecosystem services that will be helpful for human well-being. Let's see what we can do here. So this is a ecosystem restoration, kind of a stepping stones of ecosystem restoration. You can see on the left-hand side, it's a degraded ecosystem. We can do remediation, rehabilitation, and ecological restoration. So we can remove the causes of contaminant, pollutants, and other threats from the ecosystem. That will help us manage the ecosystem. We can do better management of the ecosystem. Then we can go to reinstate the level of ecosystem functioning, renew provisions, provision of ecosystem services. Again, we can regain the ecological functionality, and ultimately we will be able to do the restoration. This is the highest level of ecosystem repair. It takes time, like we talked about the spatial scale and temporal scale. On temporal scale, it takes time. It is not a quick process. It is not a quick medicine. When you take a pill and you are cured. This is a long-term process. It needs sustained efforts. So ecosystem restoration is a kind of a work which needs a lot of patience. I'll share some success stories. So when I was working in Nandurbar region, so that time the entire ecosystem was degraded because of the overgrazing as well as the forest fire, and there were other threats. But we protected around 10 hectares of forest, and you can see the difference. The picture is taken from almost the same place, and you can see the difference. So one is a very degraded ecosystem. That is a picture from 2002, and in 2004. Protection, only protection. I'm not talking about any kind of. And that helped a lot to understand the ecosystem and the ecology of the bird which I was working on. So that was a small success story, but I can share you a very interesting story of WOTR. You can see this happened in Ahmednagar district of Maharashtra. So Dharewadi village, waters, I would say the best village, which always showcase everywhere. So you can see on the left-hand side, it's a totally degraded ecosystem, but then water intervened, did watershed development, and it is protected from overgrazing, fire. And in some years, you can see the transition. So once a degraded ecosystem can transition into a well-functioning ecosystem. So that is a very interesting kind of a story, and I would suggest everyone to visit Darewadi and see what has happened in Darewadi over the period of time, and how water did interventions, and how the entire ecosystem was revived. Similarly, another example I am taking from Tamil Nadu. So there was a wetland which was totally degraded, but this wetland was then transformed into a well-functioning wetland. Earlier, a lot of issues were there, invasive species were there, but all these species were removed, and the wetland was restored. So these are the examples, and you can find so many examples in India and Maharashtra that will tell you the success story. We need to understand and learn from those success stories and implement in our implementation work. Let's go to the agrobiodiversity, which is very important part, which is key for our survival. First of all, I would like to introduce you to a scientist, Russian scientist, Nikolai Vavilov. He's a very renowned person in his field, but very few people know about him and his contribution to the Indian agrobiodiversity. So he identified 8 regions in the world, which are the centers of cross-plant origin, and India is one of them. So what his study indicated that 166 crop species were originated from India, and then they spread across the world. But 166 crop species were native to India. He also demonstrated that there are a lot of varieties of rice, and I will tell you another short story. So he said there are 50,000 varieties of rice, but recently I went to Chhattisgarh, and the Agriculture University professor, Dr. Sharma from Agriculture University of Chhattisgarh came here there, and he talked about the rice varieties. So I asked him the same question, that I heard that this Russian scientist Nikolai Vavilov came to India, and he said there are 50,000 varieties of rice. He said there are not 50,000, but 55,000. So he is still working on that. In Chhattisgarh itself, there are 55,000 varieties of rice. So imagine how many rice varieties will be there in entire India. And these rice varieties are developed indigenously, and they are accommodated or adapted to several years, several thousands years. And we have these varieties, and these varieties will help us to tackle the climate change. These varieties will help us to be resilient. So this is about rice, but you can go to every part of India and get X or Y variety of grain, which is very important. Similarly, 1,000 varieties of mangoes are there. The smallest one is of peanut size, and the biggest one is of a pumpkin size. So this is what the diversity or agrobiodiversity we have in India. Let's see what other things we have. Cereal and millets, 46 varieties we have. Pulses, 81. Fruits, 91. And all these are wild varieties. I'm talking about wild varieties. I'm not talking about the varieties which are in practice. So fruit, 91 varieties. Spices and condiments, 28. Vegetables, 76. Fiber crops, 15. Oilseed, 14. Miscellaneous plants, 28. So 379 wild relatives of crop plants are there in India. And you can see some of the examples are there. You can see so the scientists actually worked on that, and they slowly cultivated from the wild variety to the varieties which we are using. So these are some of the pictures you can see. So we still have this kind of a, I would say, treasure with us, which needs to be protected. Unless and until we protect our ecosystem or restore our ecosystem, we will not be able to safeguard these wild relatives. And they are very important because they are already adapted to climate, and they still hold knowledge about the past climate, or thousands of years of past climate. So that is very important. We understand that agriculture is a backbone of our survival. It is important for food and nutritional security, resilient to climate change. We also need to do the sustainable agriculture, because it can enhance the soil health, and it can help in better pest control and pollination. There are cultural significance also. Traditional knowledge is equally important. We are going to talk about that in the next slide. There are several cuisines and the farming practices which are woven into the cultural significance. Agrobiodiversity is again a key for a regenerative agriculture, because everybody is talking about regenerative agriculture, but very few people understand regenerative agriculture. But once a person understands the agrobiodiversity, then he can easily understand the regenerative agriculture. In climate resilient farming, regenerative agriculture, these are the buzzwords right now, but I think very few people understand the importance of those things. So once we have this agrobiodiversity, protect the agrobiodiversity, and we can protect our food sovereignty. Uh, Again, protecting and promoting requires integrated efforts. Everybody needs to put efforts in saving the seas, and policy reforms are required. This coming Montreal Biodiversity Protocol is one of the kind of a policies which we need to look at, which will help us in the future. Community participation is a very important. Without that, we cannot go forward. Especially the indigenous people and the local knowledge systems needs to be revived to understand entire agrobiodiversity in its full context. So why it is important in current scenario? Because the native and indigenous crop varieties are better adapted to the climate change. They are there since last thousands of years. So they have ingrained the knowledge about the climate change in their seeds. They hold genetic information about the past climate, and they also hold the traditional knowledge of human beings, because human beings are cultivating them since last so many years. And that's the selective breeding. Humans are doing selective breeding of these plants. So the plant has its own genetic knowledge about the past climate, as well as it also holds the traditional knowledge of human beings, because human beings are cultivating the best of the best of them. So that two knowledges together are very important for the future. They also help in maintaining good soil health and food security and nutritional security. They can tackle that as well. So that's why in current scenario, the agrobiodiversity is very important. So these are some of the examples. I could not take all the examples, but Auroville in Pondicherry and Tamil Nadu is a very good example where permaculture is being done, natural farming is being done, nature-based farming they call it. So in Auroville it is there, in Krishna Valley, Sangli, Maharashtra it is there, Vanrai farm in Pune is there. Across India, there are a lot of farms which are doing all these experiments, especially the nature-based farming. We need to learn from these experiences, put together everything, and try to find out a way where we can live sustainably. So this is my last slide, which talks about our future. So biodiversity is a very important. It is a fundamental. The diversity of genes, species, and ecosystem, they provide ecosystem services that actually provide a lot of benefits, and those benefits we can derive. And the sustainable development is again a human angle. With the help of sustainable development, we can certainly build a climate resilient future, and will help in reducing the inequality. So together, we can form a foundation, and our shared future can be created with the help of this understanding. Yes. Thank you very much. And now I hand over to Sanika. Thank you very much, Sanika.
Girish, thank you for taking us right from the whole timeline of the Anthropocene to today's climate crisis era, and explaining all these complex topics so well. We are running a little short on time with 5 minutes delay. So I request everyone, if you could just give us 5 more minutes, we'll wrap everything up as per plan. I'll now hand over to Saurabh, who will talk about EPA and stories from field. I'll share the video. So just a little brief about a video we're about to share. It's a small video with testimonials from 2 farmers from our project areas in villages in Chhattisgarh and Maharashtra. So that would just set a little context to what Saurabh is about to explain.
नमस्कार बायोटी रानाटवाडी तालुका जंगलामध्ये पशु पक्षी आणि जंगलातील मिळणारे पूर्ण फायदे म्हणजे जसे की मध असेल आणि वनस्पती असतील ज्याची आयुर्वेदिक मध्ये मोडतात जसे की तापासाठी आमच्याकडे काय कावळीची मुळीचा यूज करतात किंवा यूज करतात आयुर्वेदिक वनस्पती आहे त्यासाठी गावातील आम्ही संरक्षण करण्यासाठी पूर्ण गावातील लोक त्याची माहिती आहे आणि त्यासाठी गावामध्ये पूर्ण समिती स्थापन केलेली आहे त्यामध्ये जसे की झाडे लागवड असेल आणि उन्हाळ्यामध्ये जंगलाला वनवा लागणे त्यासाठी गावातील पूर्ण जंगलाची काळजी घेणे त्यासाठी वनवा लागू नये त्यासाठी गावासाठी काही अधिकारी असतील आणि गावातील लोक असतील तरी वेळोवेळी त्याचे मीटिंग त्यासाठी वेळोवेळी मीटिंग घेऊन आम्ही त्याचे जतन करतात मैं ग्राम क्रांति ब्लॉक औरगी जिला छत्तीसगढ़ से मैं ये बताना चाह रहा हूँ कि कुछ प्रजातियां अब विलुप्त होते जा रहे हैं और नए नए किस्म आ रही हैं इसके कारण रोग कीटों का प्रकोप बढ़ती जा रही है जलवायु परिवर्तन का कारण यह हो सकता है कुछ जानवर भी विलुप्त होते जा रहे हैं कुछ शिकारियों और शिकार करने के कारण इससे हमारे जीवन में बहुत प्रभाव पड़ रहा है
as you have different perceptions about biodiversity and they have different meanings to the biodiversity. For example, for Balu, because he is residing in the foothills of northern Western Ghats and belong to the Mahadev community, which is a tribal community. So for him, the non-timber forest products like honey, it is very important to him for his livelihood and for the Ram, who was from Chhattisgarh. So for him, the loss from pests and diseases to the crops is very much important. So sometimes the context of biodiversity can change for the community as per their use of it. But the one thing is very important and very common to both of these are the importance of biodiversity and ecosystem services in their lives, in their daily lives. So these emphasis on biodiversity and ecosystem services, these are also reflected in the components of, for example, nature-based solutions or ecosystem-based adaptation. So I will have a very brief presentation about the basics of what is the nature-based solutions and what is all about the EBA, its different components and different criteria. So can you share the presentation? Yeah. So, for example, because nature-based solution, it is a very common or very kind of a buzzword nowadays, because every company, every organization, they want to implement it so that for the sustainable development also. So, for example, the definition is like actions to protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural or modified ecosystems. So the main, aim of the nature-based solutions, because they are addressing some societal problem or societal challenges. So it can be climate change, also food, or this water security or natural disasters. So what the nature-based solutions are doing, that they are, using the biodiversity, or for example ecosystem services aspect, and they are addressing this problem also, and they are simultaneously they are providing some co-benefits for the human well-being or for the biodiversity per se. So these are the actually nature-based solutions or ecosystem-based approaches. They are used to, they describe non-traditional or alternative approaches, because there are sometimes there are some kind of technological approaches also. For example, for the protection of floods and for other climate-related issues. But this nature-based solution, they use the natural resources, and they are cost effective as compared to the other technological intervention, and they also provide some co-benefits in terms of biodiversity and for supporting the ecosystem. So next slide. So then why these nature-based solutions are important? Because first of all, as I have said earlier, and my previous speaker, they are also emphasized upon some, tech approaches which comes under nature-based solution. So they are very cost-effective, and for the climate mitigation also. And for example, they are very important to meeting the goal of Paris Agreement, so by keeping our average temperature of 1.5 degree centigrade. So in this figure, it is shown that if NBS are implemented, so the temperature is well, in the range of 1.5 degrees. But if we are not implementing nature-based solution, then the temperature is going to the higher side. And nature-based solutions, they also help in achieving this different sustainable development goals. And because they promote to access to, the fresh water, livelihoods, they also provide the food security. They conserve, they help in conserving the biodiversity. So overall, they are very important for achieving the sustainable development goals also. So, for example, NBS and climate change adaptation, because NBS has a very, clear kind of climate change mitigation kind of impacts also. But for the climate change adaptation, so NBS has a subset which is known as ecosystem-based adaptation. So it helps people to adapt to the climate change by using the biodiversity and ecosystem services as a part of, the overall strategy. So, for example, what is ecosystem-based adaptation? So it is a use of biodiversity and ecosystem services as a part of an overall adaptation strategy to help people to adapt to the adverse effects of climate change. So it was initially given or introduced in the CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity, in 2009. So there are different elements under ecosystem-based adaptation. First and foremost are the ecosystem services and biodiversity. Second is the participatory governance. And third is the adaptive capacities. So for anything qualifying as an EBA, or we can say the ecosystem-based adaptation criteria, first and foremost element is it helps people adapt to the climate change. So there are two criteria, or we can say two conditions under it. First is the EBA, it reduces the social and environmental vulnerabilities, because EBA clearly address the current and future climate change and climate variability. And it must be based on the assessment, climate vulnerability and assessment of the people, as well as the adaptation benefits that they are getting through the ecosystem services and biodiversity. Second criteria is the EBA, because ecosystem-based adaptation generates societal benefits in the context of climate change adaptation. So while it is addressing the climate change, but it is also generating some societal co-benefits. So these societal co-benefits help increasing the resilience of the people and reducing their vulnerabilities. And it is also producing benefits for the community in a fair and unbiased manner. So we can say EBA is the people-centric approach, but it is also helping the well-being of the nature. The second element is it heavily relies on the biodiversity and ecosystem services, or we can say that the core of ecosystem-based adaptation are biodiversity and ecosystem services. It helps in restoring, maintaining, or improving ecosystems and their services, and as well as and by doing so, it is enhancing the functions and ecosystem services, and which is helping in reducing the adverse climatic effects of climate change on people. And it also recognizes the dependence of human well-being on ecosystem and the services they provide. So it is a caring for the people also and for the nature also. And the third part is it is a part of an overall adaptation strategy. So EBA, in combination with some other policies, it works very effectively. So it is a one of the component of a broad adaptation strategy, and it can be operated on on any level, like local, national, or regional levels, or landscape level also. And it very strongly supports equitable governance, and it enhances the capacity of local communities. So it is a very participatory, and it is very gender sensitive or responsive approach. So it gives, it ensures the values of transparency, empowerment, accountability, and non-discrimination also. So what is the linkages between EBA and biodiversity conservation is that it enhances the resilience of ecosystem and species. So by different techniques, or by using different approaches, for example, by agroforestry and other kind of approaches. So it enhances the resilience of communities also, and for the ecosystems also, in terms of and the climate also in terms of carbon sequestration. So it also protects and restores natural habitats. By protecting and restoring natural habitats, it is enhancing the ecosystem services, which is in turn is increasing the biodiversity of that region. So it also maintains the ecological processes and services also. And it also promotes landscape connectivity, because in terms of by maintaining the ecological corridors, so it helps in maintaining this connectivity of landscape. So it also reduces pressure on natural systems in terms of cultivation of, for example, fruit trees, medicinal plants outside the protected area. So it reduces the pressure on it. So very important component of EBA is the integration of traditional and local knowledge, or we can say traditional ecological knowledge. So for example, the preparation of People's Biodiversity Register, it forms a very important component of EBA because it has a very strong component of people's participation also, and for the biodiversity and ecosystem knowledge also. And another one is that it strengthens the governance and policy support, for the biodiversity. So through EBA, so a lot of, because local governance as well as the regional governance is involved, so it helps in supporting different policies, which are very important for biodiversity also. So as I said earlier, because it is a very people-centered approach, but it is also caring of, it is also recognizing the role of biodiversity and ecosystem services for the well-being of the people. So it is, I think, one of the very important components which can ensure the sustainable development and achieve our vision of harmony in nature. Yes. Yeah, thank you.
We are almost at the very last phase of this discussion, and we have heard a lot about so many different ideas and insights and experiences today. So just starting from Marcela's, the need for shift in our behavioral pattern to when Neha talked about how KMGBF and SDGs are connected and how there is a need to create some values to the biodiversity. And it's very much connected to what Saurav was saying, that there are different communities, different people, and there are different types of value creation. Even if we are talking about the same animal or the same plant, maybe there are different values associated with it. And then when Girish talks about his idea of ecosystem restoration and ecosystem services, and also coming to the very crucial topic of agro-biodiversity. So the primary question is suddenly, why are we talking about all these things and how all these things are connected? So there is a book by Partha Dasgupta. So in that book, he's writing that these biodiversities, they can't sustain alone. For this to thrive, there are these abiotic components that needs to be in a fine-tuned condition. So until and unless we take care of our soil, our water, our air, this biodiversity, they can't survive. And when you talk about biodiversity, if I ask you or ask anybody, they will talk about some four-legged animal, the huge ones. They are the mighty ones. But what happens is there are so many smaller ones, the little ones, they do wonders for our agriculture. Our agricultural biodiversity. And also when something happens in a distant corner of Sundarban, they start searching for salt-resistant varieties, those native varieties, and those are somehow lost. And until and unless we can find it somewhere in the distant corners, those people, they don't know how to survive it. So if there is certain kind of shocks or stresses, then we look for those kind of resistant varieties. Those were earlier present there, and slowly, with time, gradually, those are being lost. And so it becomes a challenge for all of us to somehow collect the seeds and keep it alive in our society and share the knowledge among all of us. And I think this year's theme of World Biodiversity Day is important because of that, because it talks about that harmony. So when we are talking about harmony, we are obviously talking about that connection we make among our modern science and also our traditional knowledge. The rural, the urban, the researchers, and maybe all those people who are working in the fields. So this share of exchange, the sharing of ideas, the sharing of experience is what we are probably looking for here. And I won't go too further into this discussion. If you have any questions, please ask those questions. And very surprisingly, we already had lots of questions that were part of our registration form. We won't be able to address all of it because it was overwhelmingly big, the list. But those are very important questions, and we'll definitely reach out to you on some other occasion, and we'll definitely answer those questions to you. So over to you, Sunny.
Thank you. I also realized I didn't introduce my colleague, Dr. Sharanya Chattopadhyay. She's the lead for ecology at Ecobari and has been instrumental in putting this together. Before we close, and a couple of announcements, we have run out of time, so I'm afraid we won't be able to answer your questions right away right now. But one way to go around it would be we'll collect all your questions, answer them with support from Girish as well as Neha and my colleagues here. And we'll put them up for all of your access. We'll let you know where and how, so stay tuned. We will not miss your questions, don't worry about that. And in case you do not have the time or the bandwidth to write here, reach out to us through our email ID or any other channels that you're aware of. And we would love to engage and discuss further on these topics. Thank you very much for all your time and a great supportive participation. We had about 250 over 250 registrations. So it was encouraging to see that people want to know more about these things and are interested to learn even the technical parts of conversations around EBA, around NBS, as well as biodiversity. I will end, but without, I won't end without thanking some people who have been crucial for this. Marcella, thanks for your support. The two and Prashant Karaskar were the ones who helped gather them in record time for us. Kranti Wagmare here has been supportive throughout. Zahir has been our IT support through and through, so thank you for putting this together and your time. And Onkar Hande for his support on translations and overall. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye.